I'm here with Frank Turner, who's playing at Wickham Festival tonight. Frank, thanks for coming down.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to ask you some questions about your newest album, No Man's Land.
Yes.
That's coming out in
August. Less than 2 weeks.
Less than 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, it's
Great.
terrifying.
So how long have you been writing this batch of songs?
A long time, actually. Funnily enough, I wrote almost all of the album before I wrote Be More Kind, the preceding one, and I was going to do this, what is now called No Man's Land, and then in 2016 everyone went mad. Like politically around the world, and I just felt like I needed to respond to that more directly than with a record about historical figures. So I wrote Be More Kind, did that, which was great, very pleased and very happy with that, but now it's kind of back to plan A. But so some of these songs are like 5 years old, and it's really lovely to get them out into the world because I've been sitting on them for a while.
Great. One of the things that I wanted to ask you personally, there was a song on your album, Positive Songs to Negative People,
Yes.
Silent Key.
Yes.
And that is on No Man's Land,
Yes.
right?
I've re-recorded it, yeah.
So can you elaborate a bit on how that's so different?
Yeah, I mean, well, the first thing is, Radiohead released 2 versions of Morning Bell, record on record, so I feel I'm allowed to re-record.
Yeah, of course.
The thing is, Positive Songs was a record that me and the Sleeping Souls, my band, kind of rehearsed for like 18 months on the road, and then recorded in 9 days. That was the idea, was to sort of cut it like it was a live record. But in the process of doing that, we messed around with every possible arrangement configuration of each song. So Silent Key on the Positive Songs, that version is actually very different from how the song was first written. So what I've done for the new record is take it back to how it was originally, so it's in a different key. It's in key of G. I played in open G, which is not a tuning I use very often, and it's in 6/8. But that is how I first came up with it. So in a way, if you were so minded to be quite this nerdy about it, you can listen to the version of Positive Songs and see quite how much work me and the Souls do on messing a song around and trying to find a way into it. But it's nice to have a different version, and a sort of, in a way, a more faithful version.
Yeah, it's actually my favourite song of yours.
Oh, right, okay.
So I'm interested in hearing this.
Yeah,
version.
well, it's one of the interesting challenges with the new version is that, like, there's no drums on the new version. I wanted to make it heavy, but my own kind of musical background is such that heaviness is equated with thrashy drums and, thrash guitar and that kind of thing, because that's what I grew up with. And Catherine Marks, producer I work with, got me down this kind of rabbit hole of trying to make it heavy without using drums or guitars, which was odd for me, but in a good way. And we have, there's a string section, there's a choir, there's a whole load of really odd analog synths and all this kind of thing. It's pretty fun.
Great, I'm interested to listen to it.
Well, it'll be out soon.
Yeah. What's the release date?
August the 16th.
There we go.
And for once I actually know. I'm always forget release dates, but for some reason I can remember this one.
Great, August 16th, No Man's Land. So we're at Music Fusion's headquarters here in Havant, and we're doing a project called Troubies.
Yes.
Which you've recorded some vocals and guitar for a song.
Yeah, for one of your songs.
Yeah, one of my songs.
Which is a lovely, lovely song.
Thank you very much.
And which I think is serendipitously it fits in with lots of things that I've been doing lately, but in a good way. It's great.
It's I can't quite figure out if it's coincidence or subconscious.
Well, I mean,
similarity.
we're all either or. We're all influenced by everything that we hear. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. So the project we're doing, Troubies, is about tackling hate and extremist points of view. So do you think that there's a rise recently in these kind of points of view and movements?
I mean, I think the thing for me is my whole thing that I'm bothered about, that a lot of the record Be More Kind was about discourse on social media in particular. I think that there's something about people conducting political arguments in a social media fashion which short circuits some of our evolved social cues. Do you know what I mean? Like when you and I are chatting right now, I can see that you're a person. I mean, we're obviously having a friendly conversation anyway, but I can see you're a person. You read cues of people and you're considerate of them. If you're just arguing with like a tag on Twitter, it sort of takes away all of the kind of inbuilt social safeguards, and people say things on Twitter they'd never say to somebody else in real life. And until now, where it feels like some of that discourse now is kind of bleeding out into real life, and I think that particularly there's kind of younger people who've grown up with Twitter being their sort of main engagement with politics in the world, are now starting to kind of behave and speak in ways which I think are really, really disastrous, actually.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is to do with the fact the other problem with Twitter is not about learning. Twitter's about gaining attention.
Yeah.
People go on Twitter to get likes and retweets, and they don't go on there to exchange ideas, and that's a terrible thing, because politics should be about the exchange of ideas. And we've all forgotten some basic things, which is that, like, you know, you should consider the humanity of your opponents. You should always consider whether or not you're wrong. You should always try and engage with the best example of the argument you disagree with rather than the worst one. All these kinds of things. And indeed, that just the most basic, which to me is the entry-level point of any political argument, is that two good faith, honourable, intelligent adults can disagree.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Politics is not science. There is no right answer. There is no objectively correct way of looking at the world, and we need to remember all of these things and try and sort of remember that compromise is not a dirty word, and that we should all, you know, try and figure out how to live together. And that makes me sound like a massive hippie, and maybe I am.
Great.
Sorry, that was a rant.
No, that's okay. A rant is good. The other question that
Yes.
I needed to ask you was, do you think that projects like Troubies are helpful? Because you mentioned young people.
Yeah.
How do you think that this helps, and what else can we do to help the situation?
I think any sort of, because what we're talking about here is discourse, I think any conversations that are more thoughtful and more considered are useful. Do you know what I mean? I know there are some people who sort of talk about talking shops and about that not achieving anything, but I think that's wrong, because what we're talking about is conversations, and anything that can kind of try and steer people into more considerate conversation and considering the humanity of everybody around them, I think it's positive. I think it's a really, really cool thing.
Great.
And I'm flattered to have been a very small part of it.
Great. Thank you very much for coming down.
My pleasure.
And being a part of the album.
Thanks for having me.
And there we go. That's Frank Turner at Music Fusion headquarters in Havant, and this interview's done.